this House do now adjourn.
The question is that this House do now adjourn. Alicia Kearns.
Thank you, Madam Deputy Speaker, for granting this important date on the A1. Apparently other members of the House don't have the courtesy to allow us to debate the importance of this road, but I hope they will clear the chamber with the decency that this important topic respects. Now, the A1 is known more commonly as simply the Great North Road. It is one of Britain's oldest roads, tracing its history back to 43 AD and the Roman occupation. Romans, Saxons, Vikings, English and Scottish kings, cavaliers and roundheads have all marched its length. Indeed, even the notorious highwayman Dick Turpin plied his trade along the road, taking shelter even at inns in Rutland. Now, Stilton, still a culinary staple in our little part of the world, was sold to hungry travellers as they travelled up and down this road. Indeed, you would struggle to write a history of Britain without the Great North Road, and it remains as significant today as ever, albeit with a less evocative name, thanks to the Department for Transport. Now, the A1 runs 410 miles from London to Edinburgh. It is the longest road in our country and a vital link for commerce, freight and, of course, people. Each day, an average of 40,000 vehicles pass along it, and thousands rely on it as it connects us to Felixstowe, Grimsby and even Dover via the M25. Now, at the northern end of the corridor, we have the Humber ports, handling 75 billion of goods per annum, forming a vital part of British and international supply chains. Heavy goods vehicles make up 25% of all those who go along the corridor, more than double that of the national average. Now, all this, of course, can leave us in no doubt that the A1 is the beating heart of our transport network, and it is a vital connection for the rural communities of Rutland, Leicestershire and Lincolnshire that I serve. Now, it is on our community's behalf that I secured and lead this debate, as we are seeing a worrying proliferation in accidents, often too fatal, along our stretch of this ancient road. Now, the Department for Transport data unfortunately demonstrates this. In 2022, there were 500 crashes on the A1. Now, that is 26% more than the A5 and 16% more than the A2. And the last 5 years, there have been 201 closures, the majority due to accidents. Now, this averages out as an accident every 2 weeks, but unfortunately, in the few weeks leading up to today's debate, we have seen 4 serious accidents, including the tragic deaths of 1 individual and 3 seriously injured. Now, each accident normally results in the closure of up to about 10 hours and HGVs being diverted through our very small picturesque villages. Now, while some areas of the A1 rank highly on the safety index, the dual carriageway between Peterborough and Blythe, which passes, of course, through Rutland and Stamford, has serious issues. Now, these are characterised by substandard reservation crossings, substandard junctions and dangerously short slip lanes, which see drivers such as myself stop on the slip road almost every single day. We have roads that are little more than dirt tracks, which join in with the A1, high HGV numbers and a lack of signs, technology, SOS telephones and variable messaging signs, and even a lack of CCTV.
On that point, will my honourable friend give way?
I would very happily give way to my friend.
The A1 runs through my constituency of Huntingdon, but the issue is also applicable to the new A14 with similar dangerous junctions. The 12-mile stretch that includes the 12-mile section that includes the stretch between Keaston and Ellingham has both crossovers and ungraded junctions. Would my honourable friend agree that on these stretches, Highways England should introduce a reduced speed limit of 50 miles an hour where there are dangerous junctions, as there is on the A1, as an immediate measure prior to upgrading the junctions and improving signage?
As my honourable friend says, this is something we do have on the A1 already. I would caution, because I know some of our constituents, whilst they call for safety measures, often are not the biggest fans of slowing speeds. But as a short-term interim step, absolutely, until we can get those long-term safety issues resolved, my honourable friend is absolutely right to stand up on behalf of his constituents. Now, when it comes to my constituents, Transport for the East Midlands did a survey of over 1,000 local residents, and 60% reported feeling actively unsafe while driving on the A1, and over 50% reported either being in an accident or seeing one. That's half of 1,000 people in my constituencies who saw that. It's an extraordinary number. And I think it speaks for itself about the urgent safety upgrades needed, which was only enhanced when I did my own survey of residents on the A1, where of the hundreds and hundreds who responded, over 90% said that the closing of the central reservation gaps was key, and over 300 separately mentioned the slip roads being of a serious concern for them. Now, I've been asking National Highways for urgent action for several years, and I'm glad they've agreed to come and drive the A1 with me. They may soon regret that decision, but they have agreed to do so. And I'm also pleased that a few weeks before the election, they agreed and announced a review of central reservation crossings on the A1, because it was my #1 request to them. So I'm delighted to have secured it. Now, when it comes... Oh, absolutely, the gentleman. In fact, it might mean that I finally make Twitter this evening.
Madam Deputy Speaker, can I commend the Honourable Lady for bringing this forward? She's always a lady who brings forward issues to this chamber, very important as she does for Westminster Hall. This morning I understand that the BBC camera crew filmed a collision between two cars while preparing a news report about the very road safety on the road that the Honourable Lady refers to. An illustration that rural roads need more attention. The news report reminded me of my own constituency of Stamford, where I just think Ballyatwood is very similar to the Lancashire Road for me and Stamford. New improved road signage, warning posts, better lines on the road. Does the Honourable Lady agree that so often it happens that rural roads fall behind the urban roads, and there is a need to prioritise funding for rural roads?
My honourable friend is absolutely right, and actually I will turn to a potential solution that I plan to put to the government on that exact point. But yes, he is absolutely right. Isn't that horrifying that, yes, my local BBC went out to film on the A1 and within minutes they saw and filmed an accident themselves. Now, when it comes to that review of the central reservations, I want to see it conducted quickly and a commitment from the government to invest in whatever the recommendations are that are brought forward. I was pleased that last year I secured 5 safety upgrades to the A1 in my stretch, and I'm really pleased that we've seen those in place and they have made a difference. But I wrote again to the new Secretary of State requesting a meeting to discuss the A1 on the first day. Now, I'm still awaiting her response, but I hope that the government will in turn be able to get used to coming back to backbenches when we write to them. Now, I appreciate the government is in its infancy, and therefore I have some complex but straightforward in some ways recommendations to make them on the road networks. The first is around that point my honourable friend from Stamford made, which is about population indexes. The communities I represent are overwhelmingly rural. I represent hundreds and hundreds of villages. Currently, National Highways criteria for safety upgrades is based on the total number of fatalities that occur in the area, which results in these awful statements that residents find themselves saying, which is, how many people have to die before something happens, or does someone have to die before there's action? So the problem with that is that it ignores lower population densities of rural communities, like your own, Madam Deputy Speaker. Essentially, if you have a dangerous junction, or a junction where you see a high number of accidents in a highly populated area, the number of accidents will be higher. So therefore, we need to take into account lower population densities so that when we understand the number of fatalities and accidents take place, the rurality does not play against the area and therefore reduce the amount of support received. So therefore, we need a new funding formula. I would like to ask for a rural population road index, where essentially the fatalities are considered per head of population and rurality to allow a fairness to come into systems, rather than always urban areas getting the investment because they have a higher number of overall fatalities. Now, we also need to see improvements to specific junctions in the long term. Colsterworth, Great Ponton and the many Stamford junctions all need remedial works, but I know this is difficult. And National Highways has said to me that if the A1 was built now, the slip roads we have in our area would never be given permission to go ahead because they are that short.
I'd like to congratulate the Honourable Member on bringing this debate, and also the excellent work she's been doing in her constituency, successfully getting modifications made on her stretch of the A1, and she's referred quite rightly to the importance of physical changes to make these roads safe, and that there are more people killed and seriously injured on rural roads than in urban areas like my own constituency. But would she not agree that the work that some local authorities have been doing over the years to address driver behaviour, particularly among young people, has also been quite important in addressing dangerous driving and changing behaviours and driving behaviours, and particularly at night and among young people, and that's another way of addressing some of these issues, as well as looking at physical changes on the road layout?
I thank the Honourable Lady. Yes, there is no doubt that, unfortunately, driver behaviour is normally at the heart of accidents. It is very difficult to identify a genuinely dangerous road, and when I've sat down and looked at the data with the police, unfortunately, the majority of accidents in my constituency, even though we have some genuinely, my team won't drive bits of the A1 because they believe it to be that dangerous. Unfortunately, the majority of accidents do involve someone on their phone, eating food, doing their makeup, or being distracted in some way. So we absolutely need to continue to do that. Now, one of the more simple measures that I would ask the government to bring forward, and this would be low cost, immediate, and it could have benefits across our communities across the country, is that at a national level, or in fact anywhere in our country, there is currently no bespoke sign to warn of short slip roads ahead. Now, if we were to introduce a new dedicated sign which highlights short upcoming slip roads, it would be transformational in communities like mine, where the problem is that literally the school run that I do to take my son to school every day, I have to stop on slip roads every single day. It is not possible to continue driving because of the HGVs and because of how short they are. And I think if the Minister would consider creating this, it could be transformational, but also, of course, I would ask that it was trialled in Rutland and Stamford, but I think the trial would prove that this sign would make a big difference. I hope the Minister can understand that my frustration that when I put in a written question on improvements to the A1, the Department for Transport responded that the National Highways has completed a number of safety improvements to the A1 in recent years. Obviously, I was aware of those upgrades, having secured them, and the question was more about what was planned for years to come, but I know that new governments, of course, need time to come into place and come up with those plans. So whilst those safety improvements have made a difference, we do need more plans for what we can do going forward, because this is such a key route when it comes to London, Edinburgh, conduit for commerce, freight and people. Short slip roads, dangerous central reservations and poorly designed junctions genuinely put my communities at risk every single day. Therefore, I will briefly reiterate my requests and sincerely hope the Minister will work with me on achieving them. The first being, as I mentioned, a new road sign to warn of short slip roads ahead and encourage traffic to move briefly into the right-hand lane. Commit to delivery on conclusions of the Central Reservation Review by National Highways when that is concluded, because that will benefit hundreds of constituencies up and down the country. Safety upgrades the junction of along the A1 in the long term, and to change the formula for how National Highways direct safety investments to consider fatalities per capita rather than in total, to reflect lower population density areas. And of course, the Minister is very welcome, although I doubt she will take it up having heard all of this, to come and drive the slip roads and the central reservation crossings with me herself. Great Ponton is really quite something to do. Madam Deputy Speaker, in closing, there is not a week that goes by where I do not receive a news alert about a serious accident on the A1, and I have to say every time my heart pauses, and I have to hope it's not a fatality, because that is how severe the accidents are. With my son's school in it, of course, you also question, first of all, who is it and do you know the person involved? I genuinely believe these measures could make a big difference to saving lives. It is the #1 ask of my residents to solve the problems of the A1. I hope I've given a mix of low-cost, immediate solutions that could be brought in, then of course the long-term that would make a long-term tangible difference. But this would make a difference, it would save lives, and I'd be very grateful if the Minister would consider working with me on this long-term. Thank you.
That was a very powerful contribution on behalf of Rutland and Stamford. Minister Lilian Greenwood.
Thank you, Madam Deputy Speaker, and can I add my congratulations on your election. It is a pleasure to respond to the important points raised by the Honourable Member for Rutland and Stamford during this evening's debate. And I'd like to congratulate her on securing this debate, and indeed thank her for the opportunity to discuss the safety of road users on the A1. As a fellow East Midlands MP, I have driven on the A1, the section that she refers to, on many occasions, and I have some understanding and appreciation of the issues that she raises. Safety on our roads is of the utmost importance, and it's why the government has announced that it intends to publish a new road safety strategy, the first in over a decade. Work is already underway on this, and I look forward to sharing further details with the House in due course, and to engaging with members from across the House as we develop this strategy. I note that this is the second debate the Honourable Member has secured on this subject. She is undoubtedly a strong advocate for her constituents and road users, campaigning extensively to see improvements to this vital section of national infrastructure and to protect the safety of everyone who uses it. Our strategic road network is the backbone of the country's economy, with 4,500 miles of motorways and major A roads. It connects people, builds communities, creates opportunities, and is a catalyst for the UK economy. Although it only makes up 2.4% of England's overall road network, it is the most heavily used and carries a third of all traffic and 2/3 of all freight. Investment in our strategic road network is through the Road Investment Strategy process. This has led to £17.6 billion invested between 2015 and 2020, and more than £23 billion between 2020 and 2025. The road investment strategy is focused on creating a road network that is safe, accessible and reliable for all road users, and addresses its impact on all those who use it. We are committed to putting transport at the heart of mission-driven government, transforming infrastructure to work for the whole country, to unlock growth, promote social mobility, tackle regional inequality and support the transition to a net zero economy. Now, as the Honourable Lady set out, at 410 miles, the A1 is the longest trunk road in the UK. It connects the two capitals of London and Edinburgh and all the communities along its length. It is one of the most recognisable routes on the network and plays a vital role in supporting our nation's economy. With that integral role for businesses and motorists comes the challenge of balancing the strategic role of the road with local journeys and the impact of the road on local communities like those that she represents. The 72-mile section of the A1 between Peterborough and Blyth carries 20 to 25,000 vehicles every single day, as she said, with nearly a quarter of these being heavy goods vehicles, and that's well above the average for a similar sized road. And much has already been done to improve performance, including modernising junctions and improving road alignment. However, I recognise that this route still has its challenges, and the number of collisions, particularly fatal collisions, is, as she says, higher than the national average for an equivalent road. This demands examination and action. That is why National Highways continues to invest significant sums into this section of the A1 to improve its safety performance. This investment has seen a number of immediate safety-focused improvements at key sections and junctions, such as enhanced lighting, improved road markings and signage at specific locations along the route. I was pleased to hear that the Honourable Member met recently with representatives from National Highways to discuss the key issues on this route. I'm aware that they will be arranging that visit soon to discuss these in more detail, and I will ensure that my officials are informed of the specific outcomes of that meeting, and I look forward to receiving that feedback. I will give way.
First of all, I would like to congratulate the Minister on her appointment. It's a great pleasure to me to see her at the dispatch box today. Now, she's talked about bringing in the road safety strategy, and I'm not sure if that's the same as what was the long-awaited road safety strategic framework that I was asking about in the previous framework. But could I ask that Highways England, or National Highways, did have a commitment that for new junctions and new works to think about active travel, people walking and cycling, particularly across junctions, but also in some stretches along them. And I can see that under the description of the A1 at the moment that the Honourable Member described, that nobody would want to cycle along there. But could I ask that she considers that active travel is incorporated into the thinking for the new road safety strategy on major highways?
I thank my honourable friend for that intervention and for the points that she makes. She is an absolutely marvellous advocate for the benefits of active travel and the things that we need to do in order to make it safer for pedestrians and cyclists. And I recognise completely the point that she makes. I recently had to make a hasty dash whilst out walking across a major trunk road, and the point that she makes is really important. We do need to look at how we ensure that pedestrians and cyclists and indeed horse riders are able to cross our major trunk road network safely. I will also seek further information on the potential for signage relating to short slip roads, as the Honourable Lady asked. Improving the safety of all road users will always be one of my highest priorities. As I've already said, this government is committed to reducing deaths and serious injuries on our roads. They ruin the lives of too many people and their wider families. But as road users, we all have a vital role to play. I would like to take this opportunity at the dispatch box to remind everyone who is watching or listening of the fatal four. Tragically, most deaths and serious injuries on our roads are not the result of accidents. The causes are well known. Speeding, using mobile phones behind the wheel, not wearing a seatbelt, and driving under the influence of drink or drugs. Everyone taking to our roads should remember this before getting behind the wheel. England's motorways and major A roads are some of the safest in the world, but National Highways' longer-term ambition remains that no one should be harmed while travelling or working on its network. Road safety is a shared responsibility. It's important that we all recognise the part we can play, as it cannot be achieved in isolation. National Highways is continuing its work with key partners, organisations and road users to help us collectively reduce the number of deaths and serious injuries on our strategic roads. Madam Deputy Speaker, I want to thank the Honourable Member once again, not only for securing this debate and the important points she raises, which I look forward to discussing further, but for her extensive work to bring together regional partners to push for improvements. I want to reassure her that I take this matter seriously and intend to continue this conversation to see what we can achieve to provide a positive outcome for road users in the short and long term. Thank you.
The question is that this House do now adjourn. As many of their opinions say aye?
Aye.
The ayes have it. Order, order.